Hi there, it's Bronwyn. Welcome back to Before Dieting. Over the past few episodes, we've been looking at real examples of women's eating and unravelling what was happening beneath the surface. Rather than jumping straight to solutions, we've been asking questions, following the clues, and trying to understand what each woman's eating, or weight in some cases, was actually doing for her. Along the way, I mentioned the 8 types of eating, and a few listeners have written in to ask if I can talk a little bit more about it. So that's what today's episode is about. This isn't going to be a detailed discussion of all 8 types. Think of it as an overview. But today I want to introduce the map, but not explore every road on it. Also, the 8 types of eating aren't labels for people, and they aren't a way of judging eating as good or bad. They're simply a way of recognising that we eat for different reasons in different situations. But when we understand those reasons, it becomes an important part of investigating our weight regain problem. Once you see that eating isn't one behaviour with one cause, but many different behaviours serving different purposes, your own eating starts to make a lot more sense. So I'd like to reframe eating under the title today for 8 different reasons we eat. And I should point out at the start that I came up with these names after many circuitous conversations with women about their eating. Their descriptions of good and bad eating were common, but the definition of good and bad eating varied hugely between women. Universally, lettuce was seen as good, no surprise there, but when it came to things like bread, for example, it could fall into either category and generate a lengthy discussion on the whole carbs debate. There were vague definitions for binge eating and comfort eating, and they were often used interchangeably. Emotional eating was another term used to cover both. But after a while, it seemed to me that the categories that we were normally using were just too gross, too vague. So after I put a lot more thought into it, it seemed to me that there were 8 different types. So let's start with the first one, and that is functional eating. Well, functional eating is the regular 3 meals a day, predictable eating we do. It's the one that provides the foundational building block that all other eating fits in and around. Its basic function is to provide nutrition and fuel for our bodies. The next one is secondary eating. This is the type of eating that I think flies right under the radar. Secondary eating covers all the things eaten outside our regular meals. It does include snacks and treats, but it also includes many other types of calorie intake. For example, women eating their toddlers' leftovers or licking the beaters when making a cake. I had my own example recently when every time I opened the fridge to get milk for my tea, I ate another 3 or 4 grapes that were sitting at eye level. Secondary eating often involves small amounts of foods that gradually add to your daily calorie intake. And because it happens almost invisibly, it's one of the easiest types of eating to miss when tracking food. The next 2 types related to losing and keeping weight off, and they are dieting and restrained eating. It took a while for me to figure out what women were telling me with these 2, because dieting is straightforward, right? It's the one we're all familiar with. Eat less, move more, eat between this hour, not that hour, eat this, but not that. But it turns out restricted eating is what many women do between diets when they're trying to stay vigilant around food. They create a set of eating rules to keep themselves on track. I spoke with a number of women who described what I came to think of as a bank account approach to eating. If they knew they were having pizza and wine later that night, they'd skip breakfast or lunch so they could bank those calories for eating later. And that's just one example. Restricted eating can show up in lots of different ways, but it always involves trying to control eating by some self-imposed rules. The next type of eating is social eating. Now, most of us enjoy social eating. Usually it's more about the company and the experience than the food. But for women who are worried about controlling their eating, social occasions can be very different. They often arrive with a set of rules they've already decided to follow. Some women eat before they go out, so they won't eat much in front of others, where others eat afterwards because they held back during the meal. And many of them have rules like don't eat the bread, only have 1 glass of wine. Now, there's nothing wrong with those behaviours in themselves. The important question is why they are there. Are they simply healthy choices, or are they being used to manage anxiety, avoid judgment, or stay in control? And that's really what we're interested in understanding. Comfort eating is next. Now, comfort eating is another term that most people are familiar with. It's eating a food because it feels comforting. Could be that you've had a long day, you feel like a cup of tea and a biscuit. Or perhaps it's your favourite chocolate or a bowl of soup. It really depends on your preferences. Comfort foods can make us feel better for lots of reasons. They might remind us of childhood, family traditions, special occasions, or people we love. They can bring back happy memories, create a sense of familiarity, or simply provide comfort when life feels difficult. What's interesting is that comfort foods usually have a history. They're not comforting by accident. Over many years, we've built experiences and memories around them, and that's what gives them the comforting effect. Now, that brings us to the next one, and that's relief eating. And relief eating is quite different from comfort eating. Women often describe it as almost zoning out. They may have started the day with every intention of eating well, but by the evening, something has changed. The eating can feel automatic, as though they're no longer making conscious decisions. Some other things about relief eating is it often happens when they're alone, usually later in the day, and many women told me they want to hide the evidence afterwards. The important difference with relief eating is its purpose. Comfort eating is about enjoying the comforting effect of a particular food. Relief eating is about bringing an uncomfortable emotional state to an end. The food is almost secondary. What they're really looking for is relief. That's why I don't think it's helpful to think of it simply as binge eating. Relief eating is part of an eating system, and once enough relief has been achieved, the eating usually comes to an end. And most importantly, the eating isn't random, it's serving a very specific purpose. And that brings us to the final type, which is conscious eating. Ultimately, that's where the Waiting for Happiness project is heading. The aim isn't to tell women what to eat, it's to have them make conscious choices about what they eat. I make a distinction between mindful eating and conscious eating as well. Mindful eating is about the experience of eating the food that's in front of you. Conscious eating is about making a deliberate choice. You know what you're choosing. You know why you're choosing it, whether that choice is the salad or the chocolate. One of our clients gave me a great example. There's a French patisserie near where she lives, and she loves pastries. So she often stops and looks at the window, but she now can say to herself, I could have anything in that window. And she's right, she could. Sometimes she goes in and buys one, other times she turns around and walks home. It's not about saying no, it's about knowing you have a choice and making that choice deliberately rather than feeling driven by your eating. I hope that's made the idea a little clearer. The important thing isn't remembering all types of eating or trying to work out which one you're doing at the time, because we move back and forth between all of them, maybe even several times in the day. Relief eating is one that sits out on its own, though. What's useful is beginning to notice that eating isn't one behaviour with one cause. Different kinds of eating solve different kinds of problems, whether that be hunger or relief. And that's why investigating your eating is so much more useful than judging it. Now, if you'd like a copy of the 8 types of eating, you can email me at hello@waitingforhappiness.com.au. I've put the link in the show notes. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk with you next week.